Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed. Continuation of debate the budget. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to inform the House about several different aspects as it relates to the Ministry of Education, as well as the Ministry of District Administration, Lands, and by extension, Water Authority. Chief amongst these, as it relates to education, Mr. Speaker, I would refer first and foremost to scholarships funding of all of her Caymanian scholars at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, in addition to the scholarship funding for those pursuing undergraduate studies and education-related fields, as well as the establishment of the Cayman Scholar Award to provide funding for the 2 students each year, male and female, as they pursue undergraduate studies at an Ivy League or gold-tiered university. Mr. Speaker, this increased funding aims to strengthen post-secondary development pathways among our Caymanian students by easing the financial burden of the many local families that are in financial need to pursue the tertiary education, and as they seek to pursue a better educational future for their offsprings. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the increased funding for those pursuing studies in the education-related fields is further intended to encourage tertiary studies in this sector that is crucial to our nation's development. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, students pursuing overseas undergraduate studies will receive a maximum of 30,000 Cayman Islands dollars per annum from the Ministry of Education commencing the 1st of September 2022 onwards. Students pursuing the overseas undergraduate studies who qualify for the Caymanian Scholarship Award will receive up to 100,000 Cayman Island dollars funding per annum from the Ministry of Education, and I am happy to receive the full support of the PAC government in this regard. Additionally, students pursuing overseas postgraduate studies will begin to receive 35,000 CI dollars per annum in funding from the ministry as well. Mr. Speaker, I'm also pleased to advise this Honourable House about the recent widening of post-secondary scholarship funding to include students pursuing first-year qualifications in the IB Diploma Program, the AP Advanced Placement Program, and the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination, or CAPE. This, Mr. Speaker, is intended to provide much greater assistance to our Caymanian students and parity across the education system. Other enhancements to the scholarship program in 2021, Mr. Speaker, includes as follows: the provision of funding to support the award of a single payment of $1,500 to Caymanian scholarship recipients towards the cost of obtaining student visas at the embassies of the United States of America or Canada, so that the recipients could attend the educational institutions in those countries. The temporary waiver of the SAT, that is the Scholastic Aptitude Test, requirement for students who initiated studies in the U.S. based on the institutions this fall. The broadening of the scholarship award to include full tuition funding for all of our Caymanian school students pursuing advanced, that is A-level, studies at the Catholic school or the Cayman Prep School throughout the prescribed 2 years of study. Mr. Speaker, there was a situation whereby funding was granted, but just for the 1 year, although it's a 2-year course. So once we sought the support of the government, and indeed we received it, This year, we were able to extend that program to enable the students to have their A-level covered for the entire 2 years. The removal of the requirement for dual entry A-level applications to provide greater ease of transition among the dual entry students. The increase of means thresholds for annual income and the removal of the net worth requirement. So basically, the government saw it fit to remove another hurdle, that is the financial means test, which we found were one of the unintended consequences of providing a block for some of our Caymanian students. And in fact, they were almost being penalized because their parents had been successful. Although they performed well in their academic studies, they were not being able to access these funds. So we removed, for the most part, most of those hindrances. The upgrade of the scholarship application portal to enable awareness to learn about the various Education Council scholarship programs. We also were able to verify the eligibility for each scholarship, apply for available scholarships online, monitor the status of their application, and manage interactions throughout the life of the scholarship by uploading progress reports, receipts, and other documents required by the Scholarship Secretariat for the disbursement of the funds. And this is another area, Mr. Speaker, where I gave the directive to the Scholarship Secretariat through the senior team in the ministry to make the scholarship application process a little bit more user-friendly. So it did not necessarily require that you were a Philadelphia lawyer to be able to even access the scholarship platform. Mr. Speaker, as I turn now to the reinstatement of funding to registered private schools. In addition to the numerous enhancements to our scholarship programs, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education has reinstated, with the support of the government, its funding to the registered private schools in the Cayman Islands. Previously, private schools that were part of the Private School Association received funding from the Cayman Islands government. This funding was reduced from the $2 million to $1 million due to various budget cuts in 2020 and in 2021 financial years. In December 2020, however, the funding model was changed to a project-based funding model where schools, both public and private, could apply for additional funding as needed. Reinstating the $2 million per year will allow our private schools, Mr. Speaker, to implement needed projects and programs at the various schools. These private schools are indeed important to the education process in that they provide not only an opportunity for students to continue to study in the jurisdiction, because the true fact, Mr. Speaker, is that the government schools, not now or before, has adequate physical capacity or the requisite HR to cater to the over 9,000 students currently in our jurisdiction. Mr. Speaker, over the past 20 months, the Ministry of Education has issued a range of guidance and policies to all compulsory education institutions to ensure the continuity of teaching and learning amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Accordingly, the Ministry of Education issued policy guidance to all compulsory education institutions to ensure that teaching and learning continued during the mandatory school closures in 2020. The document presented the various parameters for school administrators to follow and specifically focus on the following areas: monitoring and facilitating the health and safety of our students and staff, the continuity of nutrition services, the continuity of education instruction, prioritizing preparation for external examinations, preparing for the reopening of schools back in August, and also, Mr. Speaker, in June 2020, towards the end of the mandatory school closures, the Ministry of Education issued general guidances for the reopening of school and for the early childhood care and education, referred to as the ECCE centers. The document set out the various conditions and procedures under which schools and the ECC centers would reopen on site and directly address the following areas: the conditions that were required for reopening, procedures for reopening, health and well-being, essential actions during the return of schools and the ECCA centers, health and hygiene, teaching, learning in schools, which included the ECC centers. Then in September this year, Mr. Speaker, the Minister developed new COVID guidelines for our educational institutions prior to the outbreak of the COVID-19 in our schools. The guidance specifically addressed the following areas: scenario protocols for educational institutions, health and safety measures, remote learning, readiness assessment and guidance, safeguarding our children in the remote learning environment. The scenarios outline the steps schools should take for different situations that may have occurred in our schools. This included steps to be taken should a student or indeed a staff member displayed flu-like symptoms and needed to be isolated. The health and safety measures were organized in two categories, Mr. Speaker. The first were precautionary steps that the educational institutions should take to help keep students and staff safe. This included social distancing, hand hygiene, and respiratory etiquette, to name a few. The second category, Mr. Speaker, of health and safety measures were included in the mandatory guidelines that were to be implemented if and when an outbreak happened in our educational institutions. This forward thinking, Mr. Speaker, was crucial to help our educational institutions be prepared and ready. The guidance documents, although developed by our education ministry, were also reviewed by the medical professionals to ensure that the educational institutions were provided with guidance that was scientifically based and relevant and effective. The Remote Learning and Readiness Guidance document aimed, therefore, to assist educational institutions with preparing for a shift from an in-person learning to a remote distant learning for our students, should that become necessary. It included a remote learning readiness check to ensure that institutions were prepared to effectively continue student learning should the need arise to move to remote learning for some or indeed all of our students. This was made possible, Mr. Speaker, by the provision of laptops to all of our government teachers and all of our public school students, as well as to enhance their internet connectivity. Mr. Speaker, we had a significant focus on child protection in our schools. The guidance document, therefore, included guidance on child protection matters in the event institutions needed to shift to remote learning. We want to help ensure that our students are protected while at home or at school. These students are indeed our country's most precious jewels, and as a government, we intend to continue to improve opportunities and protection for every student. We in the PAC government have embarked upon a policy of no child left behind policy, as we firmly believe that community builds country. Remote learning and readiness document also address child protection and safety, children, student, additional special needs, learning readiness, teaching and learning, administration, communication, and daily checks. Mr. Speaker, as a part of its COVID-19 response, the Ministry of Education also distributed approximately 5,000 laptops, 120 new iPads to children enrolled in our government system under our one-to-one laptop initiative. Each of these devices is equipped with online learning platforms that align the Cayman Islands' national curriculum. The ministry further upgraded the network infrastructures, including wireless upgrades for all of our government schools, excluding SciFec and the current John Gray, as they were previously upgraded. We increased the help desk support to facilitate student laptop distribution. We increased the bandwidth internet upgrade for all government schools to support the additional usage. And we also enhanced the security suite platform software for the staff and student devices. And I'm proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of the school term in June, July this year, there was a discussion as to whether the students should be allowed to take home their laptops, because there was probably a reasonable piece of apprehension that students perhaps would not take care of them and bring them back. And I took an executive decision that the students would be allowed to take their laptops at home. And it was an opportunity for parents and teachers to have that tripartite relationship where they taught their children the responsibility and accountability. And I'm very glad to say that they came back with a new school term with their laptops, and they're excited to be in possession. And it provided a sense of parity and equality and a level playing field, that they no longer had to feel a second-class child in a Caymanian classroom, but they all had the same laptops based on their school age and their level of academic performance and anticipation. Mr. Speaker, moving on to procurement of masks for our schools. From last year, Mr. Speaker, keeping up with world affairs and following what was happening with the COVID, I instructed my team to acquire masks for all of our children, our students, and our teachers. However, it was slightly delayed for the fear that perhaps it might have sent the wrong message. Nonetheless, I insisted this year that when our children went back to school for this term, I wanted all of my students to be in possession of 5 washable cloth masks that had our coat of arms on it, that they could take pride in their stride, and all of our teachers in the public school as well to have 5 of these cloth masks. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report to your honorable selves and my colleagues in this honorable House that we did in fact proceed to purchase and have now distributed 44,000 masks to our students and teachers in the public, primary and secondary schools to help curtail the spread of COVID-19 as we move into the policy of having to live with COVID and with the full cognizance that COVID is going nowhere anytime soon. Our students have been extremely responsible with their mask wearing and other protective measures. We should indeed be very, very proud of our students and the steps that they have taken themselves to protect themselves and their peers. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to draw attention to this honorable House to a few more of the ministry's achievements in 2021. Free school meals. Mr. Speaker, in August, as a government, I had the privilege to announce at the return and initiation of our students, I refer to it as the August speech for educators, that the PAC government had made provision for free school meals to students in our primary schools and the Lighthouse School commencing 2021-2022 academic year for broad outcome number 1, improving education to promote lifelong learning and greater economic mobility to enable them to better prepare to focus to learn. Mr. Speaker, one may wonder, well, why the Lighthouse School if we were only doing primary schools for this year? Because of fiscal reasons, we have to do it in 2 stages. The reason being, Mr. Speaker, the Lighthouse School is a K through 12 school, and it was going to be difficult to just give the K through 6 and leave the high school within that special needs schools without the meals. So the PAC government took the decision to provide the finances to include all of the Lighthouse School. We will see that in this upcoming budget, provision is being made to provide meals, and that's breakfast, snack, and lunch to our secondary 3 public schools here in Cayman. Mr. Speaker, it is our intention to continue this program. Some may see it as socialization, but Mr. Speaker, if we don't social engineer when it comes to education, there is no other greater justification in any other aspect of our economic pie. Investing in our children is a sure investment in our future. And so that is indeed a priority of the government. Mr. Speaker, we know that children experiencing hunger are far more likely to have problems with memory and concentration because they do not have the energy to carry out the necessary academic or physical functions. Not getting enough nutrients through food and vitamins can tamper with sleeping patterns, making a child too tired to get the most out of a full day of school. The brain develops rapidly at a young age, Mr. Speaker, and without the right nutrients, it cannot properly develop, resulting in long-term effects on learning abilities. Hunger can also have psychological effects, Mr. Speaker, and may cause depression, anxiety, and withdrawal, all of which are obstructions to a child trying to focus on their education. Hunger can cause behavioral problems. In a classroom setting, a single child's behavior can affect the rest of the students, the teacher's attention, and the overall learning atmosphere. In this case, hunger not only disturbs the affected child's learning, but the learning of others as well. The provision of school meals is therefore, in my respectful submission, an essential starting point for students to be successful in our schools. The new Code of Practice. The new Cayman Islands Code of Practice for identification, assessment, and provision of additional learning support needs in education, referred to as the Code of Practice, was finalized in May of this year. The Code of Practice, Mr. Speaker, outlines a straightforward approach to meeting all additional learning support needs, including special education needs and disabilities. This places the rights of children with additional learning support needs, including special educational needs and disabilities, at the center of the process, allowing them to be heard and participate in decisions regarding their education. The Office of Education Standard Reports, referred to as the OES. Mr. Speaker, 11 government schools received satisfactory rating in the Office of Educational Services inspections that occurred in 2021. Another 3 government schools received a good rating. Mr. Speaker, schools that received good ratings included the Lighthouse School, which received the good rating for not the first time, but the second time. And John Gray and Layman E. Scott Senior High Schools received good ratings for the first time. And indeed, the ministry took time to go out to each of these schools and celebrate with them to show how much we appreciated them and to encourage them to move towards excellence. The OES attributed the Lighthouse schools sustaining a good rating to several factors, Mr. Speaker, including, but not limited to, excellent standards of behavior. And you have to understand this is the Lighthouse School, where we cater to the educational needs and aspiration of our special needs students. And yet they were able to get excellent standards in behavior. Positive attitudes to learning among students. There were respectful, tolerant, and supportive relationships between the adults and students and their peers. There was a presence of a healthy, safe, secure, and nurturing learning environment at the Lighthouse School, where the care and welfare of the students was seen to be a priority for all. There was outstanding child protection and safeguarding arrangements. Improved students' progress was a common factor, Mr. Speaker, in both the John Gray and the Layman Scott inspection reports. As highlighted in the John Gray School inspection report was excellent leadership and exceptional student leadership. And Mr. Speaker, despite what we see from time to time in the social media, that is the exception as opposed to the rule. I'm extremely proud and an avid supporter of the principal, Mr. John Clark, at the high school. He has put his heart and soul into the development of the holistic student body there. And they have a vibrant group from boys to men program, which I also support, separate and apart from the educational allocation through the ministry's TP. And indeed, I am going to continue that support because I've seen the many, many positive benefits that have derived from that. And those are the type of programs that fall right into the objectives and the goals of the PAC government of community building our country. Mr. Speaker, the report further highlighted its promotion of civic and environmental understanding, which helps students understand and take pride in the features of Caymanian life. The improved quality of learning and the quality of support and guidance provided our students on the campuses were some of the factors highlighted in the Lehman Scott High School Inspection Report. The CSEC Regional Merit Scholars. This gives me great pride, Mr. Speaker, to report that 14 students from the Clifton Hunter High School, who's having a virtual graduation tonight, and 2 from the John Gray High School were awarded top, not Caymanian, Mr. Speaker, but top regional performers in the 2020 CSE examinations. Mr. Speaker, that is a great achievement that should not surpass our attention. 13, Mr. Speaker, 13 of those students were recognized for their performance in electronic data preparation and management. 2 were recognized for their performance in office administration. And 1 student was recognized for outstanding performance in physics. Just where we are in the junction of nation development, where with COVID-19 being here, it shows that we have students that can match anyone in the region in the scientific areas of physics. We're greatly dependent on financial services during COVID, and we see that we're outperforming men in the region in our office administration. We are moving on to the electronic global platform, and we have students outperforming men in the region in electronic data preparation and management. I said before, Mr. Speaker, and I put on record again, give a Caymanian an opportunity, and there's no one else in the world that can outrun, outstrip, or outperform them. And that's what we're about, providing opportunities and equal access to a high-class, world-class education, which we hope ultimately will continue to contribute to our world-class civil service. Mr. Speaker, Early Childhood Care and Education, or ECCE. Since the start of this year, the Early Childhood Care and Education Unit has provided significant strategic support for early childhood care and education centers throughout leadership training and joint learning walks. The unit also provided support through the Connect and Care initiative. This, Mr. Speaker, allows the ECCE unit to take more careful examinations at ensuring that our early childhood practitioners have a clearer understanding of what quality interactions and child-initiated play look like in the early years. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, what this breaks down and relates to is that we found that in the early childhood centers, it was mostly a play-related program. And because we want our children to be on the cutting edge of education, we decided to move towards a hybrid curriculum whereby some of it would be academically based and some would be play-related, so that they would be exposed at a very early age to the realities of the expectation once they embarked upon nursery and kindergarten in our public schools. There was an increased collaboration with stakeholders, including the Early Childhood Association, the Department of Educational Services, DES, and the Office of Educational Standards, OES, Life Cayman, and the Early Intervention Unit. We hosted more than 30 training and support sessions with the early years practitioners, owners, and managers. The implementation of the Teaching and Learning Cafe, which I'm very proud of. This main aim of this program was to strengthen, and indeed did strengthen, the early years provision from preschool to reception through the modeling and sharing of best practices across the early years sector. Each one, teach one. The implementation of a more rigorous approach to identifying and supporting early years children with SEN, special educational needs, through a well-developed systematic transition policy to aid the transition from preschool to reception and from reception to year one. We also had the provision of financial support for the young parents of young children, including those with SEN, through the Early Childhood Assistance, what we call the ECAP program. Almost 200 new ECAP applications were received and processed for the academic year 2021-2022. And Mr. Speaker, in the ministry, we were happy to be in a position to offer this necessary financial assistance. Mr. Speaker, when I first took up the responsibility in the ministry, I was briefed with what obtained with the ECAP, and the first thing that caught my attention was that there was a cutoff date for the ECAP applications, and I found that there were persons for a myriad of reasons missing that deadline, and therefore their children were deprived of funding that was available from the last government and continuing with this government. And so I issued a policy direction that they would open up the application date and remove the deadline. And so what that basically means, Mr. Speaker, is that from January to December, there's a rolling application process, and our Caymanian parents can apply, especially those single parents that so badly need assistance with this daycare and early childhood education, which frees them up and enables them to go out and work and make a livelihood for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the increased intervention has resulted in a steady improvement in the quality of provision in our early years, with all early years centers having received satisfactory or better rating in the new cycle of the Office of the Education Standards inspection. And this is an independent inspection, Mr. Speaker. Previously, it used to be under the Ministry of Education. We saw that it was important to have, if we were going to improve education, have an independent inspection, and that has happened, and I'm very pleased with the progress and the reports that we're getting, because if we don't know what is wrong in our system, we have absolutely no direct, specific, or scientific methodology to improve our systems, and improve is our modus operandi. Mr. Speaker, the other important and exciting announcement that I'm happy to share, which was alluded to in the Honorable Premier's presentation and the Minister of Finance, is that of assistant teachers. Having been a teacher myself, Mr. Speaker, I know what it is to be in a classroom with just one teacher and no assistant teachers, some class sizes ranging from 15 all the way up to 28, and children attention span being varied and diverse, seeing that in some of our schools, because we are public schools, education is mandatory, so we don't refuse any. We get all sorts of academic levels. So it's not unusual to see that in a particular school, there's some 22% of the total student population that are SEN students or require extra attention. So I made the presentation to the PAC government, and they have given the full support, whereby this year we will seek, this upcoming budgetary year, to put assistant teachers. We were able to do it the last government up to year 3. So we'll move now to put them year 4, year 5, and 6. So the entire primary school system will have a minimum of one assistant teacher helping the main teacher. What this will do, Mr. Speaker, it will allow the teacher to concentrate more on the teaching and the academics of the school rather than being involved in the behavioral aspects of the school. But it would also, Mr. Speaker, allow the gifted students in the class, that extra time with that extra teacher in the classroom, so that we can be catering to more individually to the student population, and we truly can become a more student-centered focus with our educational curriculum. We also, Mr. Speaker, I felt it was necessary that since we no longer have the middle school, to be able to have a smoother transition with our year 6 children going into the high school, that as the monies become available, that we would seek to add an additional assistant teacher for years 9, years 10, and years 11, which are still very formative educational years for our students, so that they can transition better into the high school and can be better prepared to do their examination choices and have time for the proper counseling to make better career choices as well. Mr. Speaker, currently there are approximately 150 assistant teachers employed by the Ministry of Education, and we are seeking to add another 127 of these critical educators into our local classrooms in our public schools. The new assistant teachers, as I said, will be able to support more of our classroom teachers through tasks such as preparing classroom activities, facilitating instruction in smaller working groups, managing the student behavior, and helping also, Mr. Speaker, to evaluate, which is a very critical part of the education learning journey of our students' work. As a consequence, Mr. Speaker, our classroom teachers will have more time, and I want to re-emphasize this, the classroom teacher will have more time to deal with the primary task of teaching, in which to get our children to learn. Mr. Speaker, I wish also now to turn to the Cayman Islands Public Library Service. Mr. Speaker, it brings me great sadness to share with this Honourable House the passing of the Director of Public Libraries in the person of Mr. Paul Robinson. He passed suddenly last month. Mr. Robinson's sudden death has been difficult for the entire ministry and our library teams. You see, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Robinson was a very dedicated civil servant and contributed much to our public libraries. He had a great passion for his work. He worked closely with our schools and helped to host many community events, especially on Saturdays. Indeed, he will be greatly missed. And we extend our heartfelt condolences to his entire family. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to share some of the good work of Mr. Robinson and the library team. Throughout 2021, the Public Library Service has continued to provide programs and services to facilitate the education and personal enrichment of members of the Cayman Islands community. Some of the main programs, Mr. Speaker, include computer basic training, a one-day introduction to computers courses for beginners and senior citizens who have learned the history of computers, basic keyboarding, Microsoft Word, how to access internet and email. And you may wonder, well, why is the library getting involved in computer basic training? And that's because we never stop learning, Mr. Speaker. And so we have e-books in the library as well as traditional books. So Mr. Paul came up with the policy guidance for us, which we gladly funded, and he began offering these basic computer lessons into the libraries so that not just young people, but seniors also could get familiarized with the computers and be able to access into the world of e-books there, right there at the Georgetown Libraries and our other libraries. He also introduced the program called the Battle of the Books, the Summer Reading Challenge program, and the storyboard competition. The public library was also, Mr. Speaker, able to successfully undertake the following projects: the installation of the stage of presentations and performing arts for the Georgetown Historic Library with funding from the Friends of Cayman Library Foundation, recruitment of a part-time library assistant, and the initiation of a new contract with a security guard to provide guard services for the Georgetown and West Bay libraries. And one of the things we found was that some parents were attempting to use the Georgetown Library in particular as a babysitting facility and would pick them up from school, just drop them off at the library and disappear until 5:30, 6 o'clock. And although we'd like to see as many young ones to come in as possible, that is not one of our functionalities. The main team continues to progress, Mr. Speaker, the construction of the new John Gray High School. And I know I am one of those ministers that get quite excited about projects. I don't just like programs, I like to get into the mortar and be able to have a holistic approach to development of education here in this jurisdiction, and to see that process evolving of the new John Gray High School. When I first were given the responsibility 4 years ago to be the Minister of Education, there was a remnant where it had been started and not completed. The last government gave funding so that we could progress it on to where it is. The PAC government is now here as the government of choice, and they too have continued with the funding of the school. And God's willing and nature cooperating and COVID dissipating, we hope to be able to commence the opening of this school come September of next year. The project team continues to progress very well. That's Mac Alpine, who's the construction, the main contractor of the new John Gray High School. The main school being Project A, we've been able to safely open some of the building for our students and staff, and so there's some lessons now going on there at the school. This includes the main entrance, the administration offices, the healthcare center, the kitchen, the dining area, a counseling area, a nurturing area. And no, I'm not talking about a hotel, Mr. Speaker. I'm talking about a school, because we believe in development of a holistic child. Students and staff also have access to technological workshop areas. That's with our TVET program, and the technical class areas and our home economic classes. A new performing arts center, complete, Mr. Speaker, with a dance and drama studio, a music room, and a steel pan room, because we're Caribbean people after all. We have a temperature control storage room for our steel pans, and a double purpose performance theater assembly hall with retractable seating. In the upcoming budget, there are plans to continue the design, the constructions of the halls of the Theoline McCoy Primary School, which is badly needed in Bordentown, and has been pushed for a number of years by my friend and now Parliamentary Secretary, the member from Bordentown East, and the Joanna Clark Primary School is also in need of a hall expansion. And we have the committed financial support to move on with these two badly needed projects within this 4-year tenure. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be more than proud, not in a smug or an arrogant way, but one to be able to invite all colleagues, both on this side and on the side of across this honorable floor, early in Q1 of next year, to have a tour of the new John Gray facility, to be able to explain and show them when the naysayers come and talk about how much we're spending. The same ones, Mr. Speaker, almost concurrently ask the question, who are we development for? That John Gray High School will be a standing and a lasting testament of who we are developing for, the children of our country, and in my responsibility, the main one, the public school. And I was happy when I heard my lady friend from across the way, the Shadow Minister for Education, refer to the transfer of her beloved grandchild, I think it was, from the private school to the public school. A wise decision, member from Georgetown South, because while we're on the watch, working together collaboratively, and it has been seen from the various contributions, both on this side and the side across the floor, education remains as a paramount consideration for the development of this country, and it has to be one, Mr. Speaker, where there is a conspicuous absence of politics in it. And I'm eternally grateful for the contributions on both sides of the House saying that the support is there for education. God give me strength and health. I will certainly continue to live up to the expectations of the Honorable Premier and all honorable members of this House to ensure that our children have an equal or better opportunity to hold their heads up, to get the high academic performances so that they can come and take up their rightful place, not at the grade Ds and Es of the scales, but in the middle management and the top management. And they too can sit in the judiciary arena. They too can sit not just in Parliament, but they can sit in the financial offices making those six-figure numbers. Who are we developing for, Mr. Speaker? We are developing for these children that I call my children, but indeed I know each person can say that personally and really mean it. Mr. Speaker, there are also plans to expand the Lighthouse School and to design new classrooms for the Red Bay Primary and build a new building for the Layman Scott High School in Cayman. Mr. Speaker, a need has been identified for a nursery also by my friend and colleague, the member from East End, for the addition of a nursery. And we did a pilot program for the Creek Primary School, and there was a number of reasons that time will not, at this juncture, allow me to expound upon why it was necessary. But, Mr. Speaker, it was one of the best decisions I've made in education. Not only has it taken the 3-year-olds out from being at home just with a nanny or a regular helper, but it provides a level playing field for those children in a world-class classroom. You can search anywhere to the little one. And, Mr. Speaker, we didn't have the money at the time in the last government to go, or the time to build extra classrooms, so we had to think outside of the box. And so what we did was that we saw that in Spot Bay, it was declining with the number of student population. So I transferred year 2 from the Creek Primary School to the Spot Bay School and took all the other classes and slipped them up so that I was able to utilize what was formerly the kindergarten classroom for a nursery classroom, and therefore it had to do minimal improvements. And it came just in time as we were rolling out the one-to-one computers, so we were able to get age-appropriate computers, laptops for our students. And it has worked well. Those children are excited. And it was a growing and learning experience, normally where the school would get out at 2:30 or 3. Of course, they were age 3s. We had to put an extra curriculum program so that they could remain there until 5:30 to allow their parents to go and work and not have to find that extra learning. So I'm excited as money has become available to do the very same thing for all of our public schools here in Cayman. I know it's going to be a little more difficult, Mr. Speaker, to navigate because whereas in Iraq we didn't really have private daycares, there's some here, and there will be the criticism that you're trying to take away business. No, Mr. Speaker, I see it much differently. With the introduction, with the addition of the nurseries from age 3 only, so there will still be a market from 1 day old to up to age 3. But what it will do, it will put our Caymanian children on an equal playing field where at that age, where they're ready, and we've proven that at the cricket school, they're ready to learn. Their little minds are like sponges, so that when they go to our kindergarten, they will all know the ABCs, they will all know to count, which is not what is happening now, Mr. Speaker. Those who have funding, those who have access to it, will find that their children will come up. And it's difficult for the children then to catch up as they progress through the various levels. That's not what this government is about, nor the past government. We want to ensure that our Caymanians are educated. If we cannot do anything else for our children, let us make time, quality time, let us make the requisite investment, because it does not pay us any benefits or dividends. It does not bode well to only question Caymanian rights at the time of the disbursements of a work permit. It has to start in the classroom, and the earlier it starts, the better we will fare as we nation build this country. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, there are also plans to build the Lehman Scott High School. I indicated to the last government, and indeed this one, that I didn't expect to get a lot of infrastructure for education in Cayman in the last 4 years. Not because the government wouldn't support it, but because we had to build and fill a bigger need in Cayman, and that was the need to house 1,200 students from out of the dilapidated, aging building into the new John Gray High School. So my efforts and the funding that we got in the last government, for the most part, was put into that. And I am excited and equally proud to be able to open that facility full, as I indicated, next year. But likewise, this being, God's willing, my last 4 years an opportunity to perform as Minister of Education, it's Cayman Brack's time as well. We have a school which continues to produce excellent remarks from those in education about the marks and the grades of the school. But it was built during a time when we did not have the financial capability to build like how we're building now, a purpose-built school. So the line of sight is deplorable, Mr. Speaker, and it gives rise for drugs, for persons who should not be on a campus. It gives rise to poor behavior, and it's not conducive to the community building concept that we have. And so we have been able to purchase 59 acres of land to the south and east of the current Cayman Brack Sports Complex. And no, not all that's for the school, but quite a bit of it would be for educational purposes. But because we have a vision, property is moving quickly and slipping from the hands of Caymanians because of affordability. So the government has embarked upon acquisition of properties throughout of all of the constituencies that can be used for purposes of the government in years to come. And that is why when we got that size property for the price that we got it, we bought it. We already have started from many years ago. I started, my colleague from Cayman Brack West and Little Cayman continued, and now I'm back to continue the development and the continuation of the Cayman Brack Sports Complex. And so, unlike Grand Cayman, where we're building the school and we have to get funds to build the sports complex, we built the sports complex and we're building the school, but the end will end up in the same place. First-class educational institution for the Cayman Islands. And as the Premier has said more than once, we're not just one Cayman Islands, it's 3. And in fact, he's proven that, in that he, I think, except for Newlands, probably spend more time in Little Cayman than both Moses and I do, Mr. Speaker. And so it shows his commitment to the sister islands, and his commitment is, and that of his government is here, because it takes a government with a vision to go and buy a property that size in a time like this. But we also know, Mr. Speaker, and you know, having been former leader, when we wait until we need all of the property to go and buy it, we spend so much more money. And we can see that with what's happening with the fish market in Georgetown, where the fishermen are there, they need it, they want it, they have traditionally used it, but it's in the hands of a private proprietor. And to get it, government would have to go through land acquisition, and that's not really the policy of any government that I've been a part of, neither is it of this government. So, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to land, if this House gives me the money, I would buy every piece I could from in Grand Cayman, because who are we developing for? For our Caymanians to stay here. What makes them stay here more? Having that little piece of this rock that everybody else around the world wants, and it seems like we are not getting it. This government, at the appropriate time, will come to this House and lay out the many pieces of property. And let me say one more thing, Mr. Speaker. That piece of property that we were able to acquire, I won't call the name of it, but the one who seemed to now own just as much land as government was bidding on that same piece of land in Cayman Brack and had offered, as far as I remember, 200,000 more than what we offered. But through the art of negotiation, and the proprietors being persons who have an interest in Cayman, and the government being willing to put the money, we outbid with a lower price. That's an oxymoron, but we did, because we now own it. That large developer who is acquiring land in all 3 islands, so that is now in the property of the Crown. And I pray to God that no future government sees the need to dispose it. That is for the prosperity of the Cayman Islands people, and in particular that of educational purposes. Mr. Speaker, I've also tasked the team in the ministry for some months now to look at the whole concept of good governance, the model, to ascertain the pros and cons of it, and to also see what we have that is working, and submit to me, Mr. Speaker, a report showing the value that we can derive from it, not just value from money, but from educational and socialization purposes as well, and that it would be in the best interest of our teachers and our country, Mr. Speaker. And I'm looking forward for early in Q1 to receive that report from the working committee within the senior management team with the good governance, based on the submissions and the hard work that the former chairman, Mr. Dan Scott, and his council had worked on in the subcommittee thereon with the good governance model, to see how we can actually bring it in, whether it's in stages or at wholesale, but to ensure that the modus operandi, whenever it's brought in, that it's good for all of the children across all of the constituencies, and that we have principals in place who've had the opportunities to be trained to take on this new accountability. Because, Mr. Speaker, I don't want it to return during my term or in a term where it depends on where you came from, who you were for, how much money you had, or where you went to get a scholarship. And that's not being racist, that's just repeating what happened in history. How do I know? I was a product of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've also been working, we've been somewhat slowed down because of COVID-19, with the work that we're carrying out with the school policy as it relates to putting it in legislation and making it mandatory from a statutory perspective of bullying. We realize that there is an element of that in our schools. We're not happy to report that, but Mr. Speaker, we have to put it in perspective. The children do not get off the bus. They do not get out of their vehicles in the morning, press a button and say, I'm going to be a bully today. There's 24 hours in a day. We have them for approximately 8. That's 33.33. That's one of those recurring decimals of the time. So they're with their parents for 2/3, or they should be with their parents for 2/3 of the day. So the parents themselves, Mr. Speaker, has the first responsibility of teaching their children and being a parent to their children. And that, Mr. Speaker, does not include going up to the John Gray, going to the Clifton Hunter, going to the Cameronback High School or my primary schools and cursing out my teachers and threatening to beat the teachers or threatening to beat the other students. Bullying comes in different forms. Children often learn from their environments. And my teachers, if they're not performing, the DG, Honorable DG, has made it absolutely clear in all of his forums that he's moving towards a world-class civil service and will not tolerate that type of performance in the classroom. But, Mr. Speaker, teachers have to be appreciated. We in the last government, as well as in the PAC government, have done and is continuing to ensure that our teachers feel appreciated. There's one little piece left, and I've repeated it in several forums, and that is the domino effect of the remuneration for those who did not get an increase or an alignment when we moved it up to $5,000. That's still a work in progress. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that before I make my exit, hopefully in 3.5 years' time, that work would have been completed, because teachers work hard. And if you thought they didn't, when we had COVID, that we were forced to lock down on the 20th of March last year, parents were begging me, Mr. Speaker, to open back the schools so that their own children could go back into schools. So it's a two-way street. My teachers have to perform, and they are performing, but they're not God. They do not have eyes everywhere. But there must be a system, and there is a system in place, that when and if bullying occurs, there's a zero tolerance for bullying, and it must be attacked and nipped in the bud as early as possible. Otherwise, we're going to get them falling through the social levels of society, ending up in Northwood, breaking in your home and my home, and then we wonder why Northwood has so many children there. Parents, single mother, single father, take time for your children. If you can go into carnivals, if you can catch a plane and jump to Miami and jump up in Jamaica Carnival in Trinidad, jump up with your children in a good way with their school books and do their homework, attend to their PTAs. Now you have no excuse. They have internet connectivity, they have their laptop, they have teachers who are paid and happy with the livables thing. They get a brand new high school, which is better than any high school in my son, United Kingdom. And I know I'll get accused again that I built a Hilton. But it's not even a Hilton. This one that I'm building, Mr. Speaker, is a Four Seasons, and I'm happy that I had the government to do it, because we have to make our children know that it's not just talk at election time, that they are our children and they are our best assets. We have that awesome responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to leave this educational campground better than we found it. We were fortunate enough to be able to get an education, to be able to avail ourselves to the numerous opportunities that the Cayman dream world has. There is still a Cayman dream, but don't leave our children as dreamers without that accessibility and that proof that they have dreamed big and received the benefits when we're gone. We are known from way back in that little red history book that commissioner wrote when he had to go and break up the dance in Georgetown and bring in the colors. He had a little statement that has always remained with me, that Caymanians could be deceiving a lot of times. You say you're a politician, you said that. Yes, I said that. Let me tell you why I said that, Mr. Speaker. Because we will roll out the red carpet when they come off the plane and play the bands at the airport and fly the flags, and we'll drive right past and come in Georgetown and not pick up a poor little Caymanian on the street. This government made it their priority to say community builds country. And to do that, it's in a plurality. It means all and sundry, no child left behind. And that is what we are determined to do, Mr. Speaker, as we move on this educational journey. We will, we shall, we have no choice but to educate our children. Mr. Speaker, let me move on now to the Ministry of District Administration. There'll be more to say about education as I navigate through Finance Committee and as questions are fielded. So I'll utilize that time for the balance of education. Mr. Speaker, the formation of this new ministry has brought a new opportunity to focus this ministry on specific related broad outcomes of our government that we have agreed. This ministry in particular can now focus on providing solutions to improve the well-being of our people so that they can achieve their full potential. We will strengthen the good governance for more effective government. We will support climate change, resilience, and sustainable development. We will build a modern infrastructure to ensure a successful future for all three Cayman Islands. In order to make the lives of those we serve much better, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through the strategies and actions of supporting sustainability and innovation while caring for our most vulnerable. I'm therefore proud, Mr. Speaker, to serve as minister responsible for a range of subject areas, including my homeland, that is of district administration, and also in the new ministry, that of lands and survey, the Public Lands Commission, Sister Islands Sports Unit, as well as statutory authorities or government companies, that is the Water Authority and the Sister Islands Affordable Housing Development Corporation. Mr. Speaker, before speaking about each particular department, unit or SAGC, I want to first note that the Ministry of Education, Ministry of District Administration, see, education is on my mind still, and lands has been and will continue to provide efficient and effective advice, services, and information, both internal and external stakeholders, through modernization and improving the current practices. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry and the PAC government, which I'm proud to serve as a part of, are creating new and exciting policies and programs, despite the comments from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition earlier on. Mr. Speaker, and let me say why I referred to that, because the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I have great respect for him. We worked in Cayman Airways. I found him to be an officer and a gentleman. But I just want to say that even though a lot of the emphasis was on that we are continuing in this government what that government is doing, that is so, and I'm happy. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a part of it. I'm not here to destroy. I said it was better to come and build up the boat than to go and destroy the engine room because I wasn't captain. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm still here, Mr. Speaker. But if we just did what the former government did, which I was a part, this new government, there would have been no need for election. They would have elected all of us back in. So it's reasonable to expect that there would be some new things that this government would want to do. So my plea is to, in the spirit of camaraderie, allow them to prove themselves and produce their programs, produce their projects, while still carrying on many of the programs and projects that we did when we were in other part. I know it's politics. I know it's after the Westminster style government. I know this is a house of politics. I know it's adversarial. And I can only speak for me. But I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, when I look across there, I don't see PPM. I see friends. I see Caymanians, you know? And I will also make another confession, Mr. Speaker, which was not my notes, but I speak as the Lord leads me. It hurt me to the core when I heard my friend, my former PS, speak, because I could hear he was hurting, and it was out of character of him to speak and say some of the things, but he's an honest man, so he spoke what was in his heart. And I thought last night, Mr. Speaker, Lord, help me to be a conduit of your peace. Help me to be a hand extended. Help me to be a voice that brings calm and nature to this house. That's all I ask, Lord, because at the end of the day, we all want what is good for Cayman. We are in different wagons. Me being a country girl, probably riding a donkey and a cartwheel, while some others probably in a limousine. But I believe that if we stick together, especially during COVID, yes, we may have different ideas, but let's be friends. I was fortunate enough when I first entered this chambers that I had the opportunity to see the persons like Mr. Higginbotham, Mr. Benson. Haig would get up there and speak 3, 4, 5 hours, beat Benson half to death. But if it was a Wednesday, they got together in the same car, went to Rotary, had their association, and came back. Or Thursday, whatever day it was. Thanks, you have been here longer than me. And all I'm saying is that the election came. It was painful. It was a long week for all of us. The results mightn't be what everybody expected, but thank God we are here. That means that your constituency and my constituent thought that we were the best person, man and woman, for the job. Let us keep that expectation up. And you know what? Come the next election, you don't have to rush in and go on a campaign, because what they saw and what they heard, they will continue to put good persons in. And then you're going to say, well, Ms. Juliana, well, how would we ever get government? Well, this one seat's going to be vacant. Work hard. Fill it. But whatever you do, make sure that we don't let politics destroy our relationships. Because most of us, and I'm talking to myself included, most of us have nowhere else to go. Yes, we got a British passport, but if we wanted to go, we would have gone there a long time. We're here to stay. As Ruth said of old, where thou goest, I will go. Where thou stayest, I will stay. And where you're buried, I'll be buried. Well, I'll be buried coming back, but you know what I mean. So let's, as we go through this process, we still have finance committee to go. Our people would much rather have us coming out. We mightn't be able to go in their partner because of COVID, but sharing with them. There's so many hurting people, so many deaths this year than being up in here, being adversarial. The budget will pass anyway, because we have the numbers. And most oppositions, even when I was opposition, we still vote for the budget. We may abstain or walk out, but for the most part, we support it. Let's enter this Christmas season and let our people know it's a change. There is a proper place for the opposition. I would not want to be a part of the government without an opposition, because then you get governments who get autocratic and power corrupts. So there is a proper place for the opposition. And the government has to be a government that also listens to the opposition, because not every one of our ministers, even though this government perhaps covers pretty much all of the constituencies, when you break it down, you still have the Cayman West, you still have the leader of government business, you have my friend David and my friend from Georgetown South and the Red Bay. They're not necessarily represented here, but their people are still our people. So let's continue to have an open door. Do what we're paid to do. Get up and argue the issues. Ask for what you need. But Lord, help us this day to make this commitment that we will not say no just because it's not coming from here, or you will not say yes because it's coming from here. Let the answer come from here, and it will always, Mr. Speaker, be the right one. Don't know where that came, not my speech, but it's free. Take it for what it's worth, Mr. Speaker, with great respect. Mr. Speaker, the minister's staff with signing authority now has the capability to review documents and sign electronically. While this may seem like a simple change, it is significant, as it has reduced the paper usage within our ministry, in keeping with sustainability, one of our objectives. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we have now shifted the single majority of our vendors to online electronic funds transfer payments. Again, Mr. Speaker, this now means that there's less paper used within our ministry, and also in the printing of physical checks. While this is a sustainability initiative, Mr. Speaker, it also enhances our team's productivity and efficiency through modernized processes and procedures. Mr. Speaker, I'm also pleased to announce today in this Honourable House our ministry's plan, with the support of my government colleagues, in particular my learned and capable Parliamentary Secretary from West Bay Central, Ms. Cathy, to launch new and exciting programs which will seek to address some of the major concerns raised by Caymanians across all three islands. Mr. Speaker, we will be rolling out affordable residential land lot program. Let me say that again because it's new. We will be rolling out an affordable residential land lot program. What's that, Mr. Speaker? It is an affordable residential program, and it will not take away from the ambitious plans of my colleague's honourable member from Northside in his pursuit of building 100 affordable homes per year. But instead, this program, Mr. Speaker, will focus on Caymanians who wish to own their very own parcel of land to construct their own house, and as such, it is not connected to the Affordable Homes Program. Mr. Speaker, this program is anticipated to fill a gap which we all see today, where we have Caymanians that don't qualify for affordable home programs due to their income being either too high for the program, but their income is not high enough to purchase a home in today's market. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, we have Caymanians who wish to have input on the design and build of their own home if they could only afford a piece of land. So, Mr. Speaker, the government will acquire and utilize some of the existing Crown property in each district of the three islands, where we would create residential land lot subdivisions. These subdivisions will include the necessary road infrastructure and utilities to allow Caymanians the ability to purchase residential lands at an affordable price. Mr. Speaker, the lots will be available for sale at cost and with certain restrictions and conditions to facilitate Caymanian land ownership. We anticipate that this program will allow Caymanians to own an affordable piece of the Cayman Islands in order to construct a future family home and create communities which builds our country. We will be providing more information, Mr. Speaker, early in 2020 as we launch this program. But I can say at this time that the pilot of this program will be launched in the beautiful district of East End. We anticipate having over 40 house lots available for sale, and we have purchased the property, to Caymanians, with preference given to the residents of the district of East End. And this program has been fully supported by my friend and colleague, the Honourable Member and Parliamentary Secretary from East End, namely Mr. Isaac. Mr. Speaker, I can say at this time that the plans for this subdivision have been drawn and are currently being reviewed and revised, but as we stand, it will have lots for sale on which the Ministry of Investment, Innovation and Social Development, because we work together as a PACU, can build much needed housing for indigent, lots for affordable homes, a lot for commercial use, that is a small retail or grocery store, and a lot for community and homework center, lot for parking, because this community will be immediately across the road from a brand new public beach, land which we recently acquired and will be opening in the coming months. Community builds country, and we are affording the middle-income Caymanian with an opportunity to form a well-planned out urban community. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we will be launching the program early in 2020, and I will be happy to provide further details 2022 at that time. Mr. Speaker, the proceeding dovetails into another new program we are working on in this ministry. As noted, there will be a new public beach in Easton across the road from this subdivision of this new affordable house lot. And the ministry has plans for the expansion and creation of a new full-service public beaches across the islands and the districts. In fact, in the Stake Bay Road, just below the high school, we just purchased a number of acres there from the road to the beach to do a similar public beach facility because they did not have any in that vicinity, almost across from Skull Cave in Stake Bay. This means, Mr. Speaker, the public beaches that have amenities, and while I'm there, I'm trying desperately to get the property that we know as hell in West Bay. There's at least one proprietor that's not agreeing on the price, so anyone in West Bay, if you have any influence with the owners, please put a say in, because I would like very much to purchase that remnant land for the people of the Cayman Islands. And the government certainly will support that, as indications have already been made available in our land vote if we can get it. Mr. Speaker, we would like to see a continuation of our public beach and having appropriately maintained restrooms, recreational facilities, camping grounds, free internet, so that our young people have things to do. I heard my friend from South Sound said that her and her colleague from South Sound West, Georgetown West, that they provided, I think it was C3 who assisted in providing internet there. That's something we want to roll out across all of the constituencies so that our young people and even our mature citizens can go and congregate. There was a joke that was passed around a bit earlier that if you wanted to use your bathroom at home and they were all full, you couldn't get to use them, turn off the internet, and one would become immediately available. And so that just, it's a joke to show the importance and the necessity of the internet to our people in Cayman, where they want to keep up with the news, they want to keep up with their friends and social media, and just it's that instantaneously and that gravity towards information that I think we need as a government to assist in providing, and that's what the minister hopes to roll out over this next 3.5 years. Mr. Speaker, as such, in consultation with the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, the Department of Environment, and the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, we plan to significantly expand public beach facilities across all 3 islands for the benefit of Caymanians, residents and visitors alike. We've seen during COVID that we got lockdown fever, and people were begging. Caymanians that never went to the beach before were begging for that outside leisure time, and we're moving to provide that and make sure that they're well kept. And as we move along with our beautification committee, that's going to be led from the member from Savannah, and it has representatives from each of the districts, and they will have subcommittees to make sure that we keep these Cayman Islands beautiful. That's what attracts people here, but more important to me, that's what's going to keep our young people here. So we won't have them catching British Airways and going to move to England or Canada or the US. We want our young people here. We're not educating them for another jurisdiction to have a brain drain. We know what that is from Cayman. We don't want to see that happen in Cayman. So let's develop our communities so that we can create the great country that we all want to see created. Mr. Speaker, for example, on Saturday we will be breaking new ground on a new exercise park at the 7 Mile Beach. And in 2020, the first quarter, we hope to have this park open. This, Mr. Speaker, is being created 2022. This, Mr. Speaker, thank you all for listening. This, Mr. Speaker, will be created through a public-private partnership, and it will be the first of its kind in the entire Caribbean. It will enhance the well-being and health of all those who utilize it. Mr. Speaker, again, this shows the collaborative nature of the park government and the vision for a healthier society. It also draws on the ministry responsible for sports, desire, and indeed the government's broad outcome number 7, utilizing sports to enhance the lives of our people. Mr. Speaker, not to belabor the point, but just to note, we also have plans for new public beaches in Bordentown, Easton, Northside, I mentioned Cayman, Spots Beach, and Minister from South Sound, don't feel no way, but I don't have the courage to go to the South Sound Beach without you. In particular, we expect to begin work on a new public beach in Bordentown in collaboration with the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resilience, the Department of Environment, Ministry of Planning, Agriculture and Housing, and Infrastructure during the first quarter of 2022. The new beach will have an area specific for camping, this is in Bordentown, a sporting area, restroom area, we already purchased the property, ample parking, vendor kiosks, cabanas, nature boardwalk, and a future swimming and recreational dock, subject to permission from DOE, of course. Mr. Speaker, another new program that the ministry is currently finalizing is establishment of the Sister Islands Adult Training Facility to provide engagement and services to persons with disabilities or need in special assistance. It is important, I believe, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we engage with those persons and to provide them with the highest quality life possible. Mr. Speaker, Grand Cayman has the Sunrise Adult Training Center, which is being capably directed by the Honorable Minister responsible for Children and Family Services, and by all accounts, their clients lead a more fulfilled, meaningful, and rewarding life based on the services and programs that are being delivered by the Sunrise Adult Center in West Bay. We envision the same for the Sister Islands, and therefore I look forward with eager anticipation to officially launch this program in 2022. We're going to be using, Mr. Speaker, an existing building, which was purchased under a previous government that was in many years ago, and it's currently was designated as a youth center where the Labor Office, the Department of Environment, and my former MLA offices on the Main Creek Road. That is being renovated for a new youth program center and as a civic center, so that the so-and-so club that we have, which is the older, mature citizens, go on Monday evening. They do various crafts and cooking, and they sell it at our agriculture show to get funds, etc. And just as a meeting place, because a lot of them are widows or widowers, and they just have some time, good quality sharing time with Ms. Anna Rose and all. The young people also go on Friday nights, and so that is a bigger space, and we're putting a space like for a reception and office that it can be used for other functions. Sometimes there are funerals in the graveyard and no place to use. It'll be right next to the creek graveyard in the eastern districts that they can come, or western districts, and have their socials. We can do technical and vocational training there until we get our high school built on the bluff. And then the existing high school would be used to house the UCCI University College, so that we can do our technical and vocational training there, and our public work guys can come and get training. I envision where they would work in the morning until it gets hot, where the level of productivity goes down and their diminishing returns, because we do live in a tropical hot area. They can then go to the school there, get their training for the MEPs, the mechanical, the plumbing and electrical, so that they can have optimism, some hope that they can move on up in their jobs, so that when they retire, their pension would be more than $200 or $300 or $400 a month. They can have a real expectancy to improve their lives and have some upward mobility at the Public Works Department. Mr. Speaker, almost every time I go to eat and treat, Miss Joy Tibbetts is there, and there was a time when we had a summer function in Harmony Hill that provided the services just for a few weeks during the year. That no longer exists, so the time has come for us to, there's about 10 of these special needs adults on the island, to bring them out from being locked away or not having that opportunity to meet and mingle with their peers and to get an education and to do some arts and some crafts and do some field trips. So we've also ordered a vehicle that's a special needs vehicle, because the one that we have now is aging, to be able to facilitate and pick them up, and that they can feel that they're into the mainstream and a part of the society. So I'm really excited and looking forward to bringing that program and launching that in early 2022. Mr. Speaker, while there are many more initiatives I can speak to in my ministry, the underlying departments, I want to highlight one more before speaking more specifically about the department's units, the SAGCs under my respective ministry.
Honorable Minister, did I hear you correctly in talking about the parks? Did you mention Barkers?
Mr. Speaker, I did not mention Barkers as an example of what was given here, but I am privileged, being part of the park government, that there is an active consideration for acquisition of additional property in the Barkers area, and the West Bay contingent, which is pretty much led by you, being the father of that contingent, never makes us forget the importance of it, and the government will ensure that we keep you happy, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's all I can say. You're welcome, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as indicated, as minister, there is plans to resume the street lighting program in Cayman and Little Cayman to be able to light up for the safety. And the reason I'm referring to that, because I'm on the district admin, the Honorable Minister responsible for works deals with street lighting each year through CUC and Grand Cayman. That's not within my ambit, so I'm referring specifically to Cayman, Little Cayman, not that I'm leaving out Grand Cayman. And so, Mr. Speaker, in addition to the street lighting, we will install some much-needed drain wells in areas that are prone to flooding. This, like in Grand Cayman, will be a much welcome relief to the affected residents. This has been a program that my colleague and I have been carrying out over 20, 25, 26 years, but we do it incrementally because there's never sufficient funds to do all of it one time. And indeed, with the climatic changes, even if we did have the money one time, we find that the rains are more frequent, the hurricanes are more ferocious, and so the need becomes even more evident as time goes on. And so we're happy with the incremental approach. Mr. Speaker, turning now quickly to lands and survey, I will speak briefly in regard to one of the key departments, not only in the Ministry of District Administration and Lands, but also in the entire Cayman Islands, namely the Department of Lands and Survey, and how they work directly contributes to our government's broad outcomes, number 5, supporting climate change, resilience and sustainable development, and number 8, building a modern infrastructure to ensure a successful future of our islands. Mr. Speaker, the success stories of the Lands and Survey Department are many, and I'm glad to share how our services have significantly contributed to the revenue of the Cayman Islands government, the effective operation of our booming real estate market, as well as contributing to the activities to address sustainability. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Lands and Survey has significantly outperformed all metrics amidst increasing service demands. As of the 31st of October, 2021, Lands and Survey has generated stamp duty and register fees in excess of $105 million. Let me say that again, Mr. Speaker. Even though we're in COVID and the world seems to be in turmoil and there's so much uncertainty, we here in the Cayman Islands have so much to thank God for. We are truly a blessed nation. Can you even begin to imagine that in a time such as this, at the Lands and Survey, we were still able to get revenues in the tune of $105 million, which is, by the way, Mr. Speaker, the highest ever recorded for Lands and Survey. The significant milestone has been one of the key contributors to the Cayman Islands revenues over the past year, especially, as I said, during the COVID pandemic, when other key revenue streams decreased. I would say, Mr. Speaker, that seeing this performance from the Lands and Survey over this time, I think we can well and truly say today that the third pillar of the Cayman Islands economy, behind financial services and tourism, is indeed a real estate market, with a large thanks to the ongoing work of the world-class civil service at Lands and Survey Department and their hard-working, dedicated team. Along with exceeding this revenue target, Mr. Speaker, I am also happy to confirm that the department has also met and will exceed its entity revenue targets with other fees as well. Innovation to enhance customer service. Mr. Speaker, in order to continue to provide support to our valued team and customers with the resulting escalated service offering and delivery, our government has supported the department's initiative to modernize its policies and procedures to continuously improve its customer service to a rapidly growing customer base. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Lands and Survey continues to drive innovation to improve efficiency and to provide customer self-service capabilities so that customers can access information now 24 hours a day, 7 days per week, 365 days per year. Mr. Speaker, many of these exciting new initiatives will be coming online in a phased approach over the next 18 months. One of the new initiatives that I'm most excited about is a new interactive chat box information service, aptly named LILA, which stands for Lands Interactive Live Assistant, that went live on November 2021. The chat box is located on the Lands and Survey main webpage, caymanlandinfo.ky. Mr. Speaker, the chat box will allow users to ask questions and get immediate responses. That's a big improvement, sir. Normally, as a government, we get chatted about that the phone rings and no one answers, but as the Deputy Governor and the government moves about ensuring that there's a world-class civil service, this will be an integral part of moving towards that status, the chat box. It will also guide users to the appropriate forms to be completed, as well as provide information on how to complete the forms. So it's user-friendly, Mr. Speaker. The chat box tool will be the easiest way to find answers to the most common land registration and stamp duty queries without having to speak to Lands and Survey staff members in person or via the telephone. The chat box will be accessible at the customer's leisure, and it is timely as it will reduce face-to-face interaction, especially during the current COVID-19 issues. So there are some good things that are are being derived from the COVID environment. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, the chat box I refer to as Leela, going forward will be intuitive and will learn from questions it is asked. The built-in learning will allow Leela to improve the efficiency and effectiveness over time, while also making recommendations to the department on possible improvements. It really is exceptional, Mr. Speaker, and I would highly recommend all members of this honorable House to take an opportunity to ask Leela questions. Don't ask about what's the results for the next election, though. It's important to note that Leela has initially been loaded with the most frequently asked questions, which usually relate to land registration section or stamp duty. However, over the upcoming months, more information will be loaded onto Leela, such as surveying information. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, in conjunction with the Department of Lands and Survey, has an ambitious plan to amend a host of land and survey-related legislation, including but not limited to the Land Surveyors Act and Regulations, modernization, Registered Land Act, modernization, the Registered Land Act and Prescription Act, protection of our right-of-ways, which we know has been contentious for many decades, the Strata Titles and Registration Act and Regulations, modernization, the Roads Naming and Numbering Act and Regulation, the modernization thereof, the Land Acquisition Act, modernization, various amendments and new legislation to facilitate e-conveyancing. Mr. Speaker, as you can see from the above, it is indeed an ambitious legislative plan, but I have the utmost confidence in my ministry and team of Lands and Survey to drive these legislative changes. And in fact, the last cabinet, we asked for a number of these for drafting instructions to be done, so the process has already commenced. Mr. Speaker, while each of the above pieces of legislation are extremely important for various reasons, I want to take the time to focus on e-conveyancing as a project. Mr. Speaker, for clarity, I'll briefly explain what is e-conveyancing. The term e-conveyancing or electric conveyancing, as noted by the Lawyers Conveyancing in Australia, refers to conveyancing transaction settled electronically through the platform provided. The representatives of the parties and their financiers participate in an electronic workspace where the registry instruments are prepared and electronically signed, that is to transfer the mortgage, the discharge, the release of the mortgage. Duty may be paid as a settlement disbursement. The balance of the purchase money and its disbursements are agreed. The documents to be lodged for registration are checked and pre-settled at the agreed settlement date and time, provided the documents are in order for registration. The balance of the purchase money is paid and the proceeds of settlement are dispersed. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the relevant registry instruments are electronically lodged for registration, which usually follows that same day. So not only there's built-in efficiency, but I'm sure it will be well appreciated by those in the surveying and real estate business. In most cases, electronic conveyancing does not cover the whole of the conveyancing transaction, just the preparation for and the execution of the settlement and registration. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the settlement itself, the platform is essentially a virtual settlement room. It is with this in mind, and considering the significant growth in the real estate market in Cayman, that the CIG revenues derived therefrom and the Lands and Survey Department, with the support of the ministries embarking on the implementation of e-conveyancing, that this will work. This is all against the backdrop of efficiency and the broader e-governance strategy of modernization, which commenced with former Minister from Georgia North and is being now continued by this government, and the Department of Lands and Survey currently digitizing the land records as a measure of improving our service delivery. Mr. Speaker, the development of an e-conveyance system will include online Land Registration Systems, or the OLRS, which shall facilitate the online uploading of data and documents from the customers and other departments. These will include land registration documents, surveys, valuation reports, and all other supporting documents. An electronic land registration system will have a positive effect on the efficiency and effectiveness of the services in this department, both internally and external. The OLRS will also allow for improvements in the accountability and transparency for the department of all of its procedures and processes. Mr. Speaker, this computerized system will allow for the creation of online access platforms for individuals and businesses alike to request services, to register complaints, submit payments quite easily. The digital service will also improve our revenue collection, and while it will lower the costs associated with service delivery. Mr. Speaker, I'll also note here that over the past year, the department has developed a new user-friendly platform which has replaced the now defunct and previously used Windows 7 application. All these combined innovations, Mr. Speaker, are aimed at improving efficiency and effectiveness of the Lands and Survey Department, while also providing customers with better service experiences at a lower cost to the Cayman Islands government. Talent development. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to speak of the Caymanian talent development being undertaken in the Lands and Survey Department. Through the ministry, we are committed to providing talent development opportunities for our Caymanians, and we are fervently working towards not only increasing the number of Caymanians in this department, but also ensuring that Caymanians are developed for leadership roles in the department. After all, it is a very important department. There are qualified and capable Caymanians who have been identified and have expressed interest in growing in the organization. And to this end, the ministry chief officers and those responsible under Section 5 of the Constitution have created a succession plan for the department in accordance with the Public Service Management Act and personnel regulations. Just to add, Mr. Speaker, the succession plans contemplate that by the end of 2022, the department will have a Caymanian director and a Caymanian in the newly established post of deputy director. Mr. Speaker, this succession plan identifies key roles in the department and provides a clear pathway for Caymanians to take up these roles. And Mr. Speaker, I believe it's safe for me to say that this is what the Deputy Governor, Honorable Deputy Governor, means when he says a world-class civil service. Not only are they positioned, but he has allowed his delegated chief officers in consultation with him to clearly state what is the path from point A to B to get this position and to make them know that the positions are available so they can plan for their careers and their future. While the plan has not identified a Caymanian, and let me say that again, while this plan that I'm speaking to, we have not picked out a Caymanian, the department has created new trainee roles for young Caymanians as entry-level positions in each section in the Lands and Survey Department. That is the surveying section, the valuation section, the GIS and mapping section, and the lands register section. Each trainee will be provided with on-job experience. We're educating them on one side, and we're now providing experience on the other side, providing opportunities so that community can build country, as well as the department will facilitate the trainees' tertiary education in the specified field of study required for that section. Mr. Speaker, upon completion of the requisite qualification, the trainee will enter into the department's succession plan for upward mobility within the organization, sustainability, and infrastructure strategies. Mr. Speaker, as most members will be aware from the recent press release by year end, The Cayman Islands will have an up-to-date coastal navigational chart through the ongoing LIDAR survey in collaboration with the UK Hydrological Office. This information will replace the data that is decades old. The UKHO is also providing a new tidal gauge monitoring equipment across all 3 islands, which will be installed at key locations and monitored by the surveying team in Lanson Survey. This new data, Mr. Speaker, and information will greatly assist with more accurate storm modeling for the hazard management Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, I think it's also critical to point out that in 2022, the UKHO will also be facilitating a deep water survey. Note aforementioned that the LIDAR survey is considered for our coastal shallow waters, which surveys up to 40 meters below the ocean surface. The planned deep water survey, Mr. Speaker, will survey up to 7,000 meters below the ocean surface and is being conducted through another public-private partnership facilitated by the UKHO. The information gleaned, Mr. Speaker, from this survey will be owned by the Cayman Islands government, and it will be solely used at the discretion of the government. The combination of the coastal shallow water survey and the deep water survey will be critical in understanding the ocean currents around these islands, and Mr. Speaker, it will provide a great insight for navigational purposes, local fishing, maritime boundary negotiations, which we have between ourselves and Cuba and ourselves and Jamaica, a storm modeling, and a host of other uses. Turning quickly then, Mr. Speaker, to the valuation section. Mr. Speaker, our valuation and estate section at Lanson Survey is concluding its 5-year revaluation of the entire portfolio of government properties. This includes our SAGCS that will feed into the year-end accounts. It includes all operational property, including the government administration building, airports, health and sports facilities, plus non-operational Crown properties. The 5-yearly revaluation directly contributes to the governance of the entire Cayman Islands government's accounts. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to note here that based on the current market values, we are expecting that the final report will show a significant increase in the value of the Cayman Island government assets. This monumental task was completed in addition to other significant work undertaken by the valuation section of the department. The valuation section, Mr. Speaker, within the department is a small team of merely 10 persons, and it is responsible for other tasks, such as the calculation of stamp duties, the Cayman Islands government lease negotiations, road compensation valuations, valuations and negotiations for land acquisition, just to name a few. The surveying section, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to take a few moments to speak of this department, which is currently led by 2 ably qualified and competent Caymanians. Mr. Speaker, this section in the Lands and Survey Department has been woefully understaffed based on the workload over the past few years. I'm happy to report that this government has seen fit to increase the staff complement in this section in order that they may more effectively and efficiently carry out this needed work, which includes the vast majority of our surveys for our public roads. And we heard the Minister for Infrastructure say that roads he will build, and I take him for his word, because in the few months he's been here, he's certainly quickly replacing the nomenclature of the action man in the form of the member from North Side. So we have to make sure that our lands and survey are able to keep up with the surveys for these public roads so that it will not slow down his program and that of the government. Mr. Speaker, not only does this government see fit to increase the staff complement of the surveying section, but we are also increasing staff complement of a sister section of the survey section, that is the GIS mapping section. Both the surveying section and the GIS mapping section, they work closely together. They develop and produce what are known as boundary plans, or BPs. The PCMs prescribe composite maps. I must say, Mr. Speaker, that I'm extremely excited for the upcoming works of this department on the extraordinary level of support provided to them in this new budget from the PAC government. Now, Mr. Speaker, if your indulgence, I'd like to turn quickly before time permits me not to so do and speak to district administration. Mr. Speaker, our government's broad outcome of providing solutions to improve the well-being of her people so that they can achieve their full potential has been and remains the focus of district administration. Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, the Sister Islands would not function without the terrific work that is carried out at district administration. I often joke with the district commissioner to tell him that he is the de facto governor, and that is a mini government that they have to operate there with much less HR and other functionalities, but they do their very best, and I'm very proud of the team there. This is true for sections that fall under all of district administration, from departments to agents to units. The common mantra that if you need something in the Sister Islands, contact district administration. Mr. Speaker, through the subject of district administration that's now under my purview in the recent months, I'm no stranger to the subject area, having been born and bred at Cayman, as having responsibility for the department early in my political career as well. I'm glad to say, Mr. Speaker, that we worked collaboratively over the past few months to address and remedy several immediate concerns that have resulted in a positive impact being made in the Sister Islands community. We now look forward to implementing new programs and initiatives, also enhancing existing programs and initiatives to improve the lives of all of our people on Cayman and Little Cayman. The Ministry, through the Department of District Administration, will therefore, Mr. Speaker, continue to expand and upgrade the Sister Islands road network, expand the district administration building to facilitate improved services and to create a one-stop atmosphere, expand and improve the disaster management capabilities in our Sister Islands, expand and upgrade the public beach facilities and add public restrooms in Cayman and Little Cayman. We will seek to expand our cemetery space in Cayman and Little Cayman, especially Little Cayman. It's becoming an urgency. They continue upgrading the piers and the related park facility, expand and improve sporting facilities, which would include provision of a sports field in Little Cayman for the workmen there who've been asking for it. We're happy that we're going to be able to have this completed. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry and the Department of District Administration are working diligently to finalize the procurement and installation of a Mondo track for the Cayman Sports field, which will afford aspiring athletes in the Sister Islands with appropriate infrastructure to train and develop their skills to become world-class competitors. The new Mondo surface is one of a number of upgrades and improvements that are envisioned and are being investigated for the improvement of the sports complex on the BRAC, and it will be similar to what we put in 2 years ago for Clifton at the national track here in Georgetown. Mr. Speaker, the intention is to ensure that our children and people in the Sister Islands are afforded the same opportunities as people here on the bigger Sister Island, so that they can develop their skills and talents to the best of their ability and continue to meet the broad outcome number 3, which is, Mr. Speaker, providing solutions to improve the well-being of our people so they can achieve their full potential. Mr. Speaker, in addition, I have also requested, and this government passionately believes, like I said several times in my contribution, that community creates country, has improved the addition of new appropriations to facilitate the start for deep well and street light programs, which I mentioned earlier in my address in the Sister Islands. We would also meet broad outcome number 8, building a modern infrastructure to ensure the successful future of our 3 islands. Mr. Speaker, 2 of the main success stories of district administration include, but not limited to, the creation of new roads to provide needed infrastructure, in particular on the Bluff, and the continuation in Little Cayman, provide needed support to the most vulnerable, which has and remains very important to myself and my colleague from Cayman West and Little Cayman. Mr. Speaker, it's important for all members and the wider public, especially on Grand Cayman, to recognize that Cayman and Little Cayman do not have the same support that the larger island has are the same framework, and as such as the needs assessment unit. And I'm so happy that my honorable colleague, who's now responsible for children and family units, has pledged that he's going to reform, and he's already started to make it more user-friendly, to enhance on the privacy of the department and the delivery of the department. Because after all, not only do we ask the question, who are we development for, but who are we delivering to on time, and the relevancy of that. And I have every confidence that he himself and his able parliamentary secretary member from Savannah will do a sterling job in that regard. Mr. Speaker, the assistance has been significant in assisting the indigent persons, which was started with you many, many years ago when it was not in vogue to so do. There was and remains a very large demand, and through my initiative and the support of the government, we have been able to meet the needs even during COVID, and we have assisted and are on track to assist the most vulnerable of our community with approximately 50 projects through the Sister Islands Home Repairs System program. Mr. Speaker, we found just after the election that the need was great there, and this government continued what was started in the previous government and got additional funds so that we would have adequate funds, not just for the cleanup program, but for the Homes Assistance Program to take us through the end of December. And again, this year in the budget, members will see that there are allocation for the continuation of these two very needed programs. Mr. Speaker, while the hurricane shutters may not seem like a necessity, I will say it's much more sustainable than purchasing plywood every year, and less time consuming as well. And every time there's a storm threatening in the jurisdiction, my colleague and I know what it is to get the plywood calls there in the Sister Islands, as I'm sure obtains here and Grand Cayman as well. The installation, therefore, then of the hurricane shutters for our most vulnerable is a sustainable way to provide assistance to those in need, and the policy has been streamlined to include that into the housing program. Mr. Speaker, the Sister Islands Beaches and Community Cleanup Program is another program near and dear to my heart. Initially it was called Pride, and then NICEN. For now the Sister Islands, we call it the Community Cleanup Program. I was at the heart of the creation of this program with yourself, Mr. Speaker, over 10 years ago. The program engages many unemployed Cayman Brackers, Little Caymanians, and now even Grand Caymanians. And I say that being a Bracker, you'll understand why I broke it in 3 categories, but we're all one Caymanian. Since COVID, they come across to us, and we gladly with open arms receive our brothers and sisters from the big city of Grand Cayman. And they're helping us keep Cayman Brack. They've been helping us to keep Cayman Brack and Little Cayman very, very clean. Mr. Speaker, upon taking up the reins of district admin, I ensured that the necessary funding was in place to add cohorts so that the program could continue to fill the gap in the community. And therefore, I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, to have been able to positively engage over 60 Caymanians per year, providing them with a lifeline during this difficult time, and they will be working right up to Christmas Eve this year, Mr. Speaker. The program continues to be a key mechanism to reduce illegal activities as well in the Sister Islands by providing persons involved not only with a monetary reward, but also by imparting self-worth and pride to the participants. We will further enhance and improve the program in the upcoming years to innovatively and creatively ensure greater success. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, we've now procured and have in our possessions new shirts with their logo on it, which we'll be distributing to them in a training session on the 2nd week of January, where we'll have the police commissioner, a representative from the National Drone Council. We'll have some fun activities and some training activities to kickstart the new year with this program. Sister Island Sports, Mr. Speaker, directly contributes to the government's broad outcome, utilizing sports to enhance the lives of our people. The work of the Sister Island Sports is important to our community, from the young to the young at heart. The Minister to Sister Island Sports will continue to improve the lives of all through sport by using the National Sports Policy and Strategic Plan, and by working hand in hand by my friend and colleague, the new Minister of Sports. Some key strategic initiatives will include the strengthening of competitive and learn to swim program. We have a wonderful 25-meter swim facility that was done under last government, continues on this government. I know that the Minister of Sports is moving forward to the creation and implementation of a 50-meter pool in Cayman, which all of the islands will have benefit for. And I pray that my successor will have the support of the next government to also get a 50-meter pool there, because that will allow us to diversify our tourism product and be able to invite those professional swimmers from up north and across different jurisdictions to come in here, and they fly with their families. And it's a niche market that I think we really need to look at, invest in, and develop in. Then, Mr. Speaker, quickly, sports education training is done in our community, in our schools. We continue to strengthen and support the delivery, effective sports programs, 2 minutes to name, with the time allotted, enhance the links and coordinations among sports and education, and we increase the value placed on sport, recreation, and physical well-being. And this is so important during COVID, Mr. Speaker. And so we thank the government and all the support that we're getting for the Sister Island sports. We're also grateful, Mr. Speaker, as time winds down, that we've been able to move to the creation, implementation of the Public Lands Commission, who are going out supporting our climate change, our resilience and sustainable development. It would also begin to regulate and permit commercial activity on public lands where suited and appropriate. The Water Authority is another authority which I'm extremely proud of. They're having an annual Christmas party on Friday. That is one department that I never really have to visit, but I visit because I enjoy visiting, because they have a very capable leader, Ms. Julia, and her team, and they continue to maintain adequate, clean, the best water in the Cayman Islands, and they're now carrying out very needed distribution to Cayman Rock. Mr. Speaker, my time is gone, but I would ask you for your indulgence for 5 minutes. I take that your tacit support. Sorry.
Please continue.
Thank you, sir. Quickly in conclude, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that the Water Authority, I wanted to confirm a matter which was raised by my honorable colleague from Northside, that yes, we do have to dig up the roads to supply the water when it's broke, but the Water Authority always pays their bill on time, and Ms. Julia ensures that it's paid, so that's a third part of revenue to the department. It's not where they go out and dig it up. I'm not sure about the other providers, but I can vouch for my Water Authority. I just wanted to stick that in, otherwise I wouldn't be able to go to the party on Friday, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is an honor to serve as minister with responsible for education and district administration. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with the PAC government to carry out their initiatives and their plans in the upcoming 22 and 23 budget. I want to thank the Honorable Premier, all of my colleagues, all of which I try to work well with to try to contribute something to the team. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your guidance and your teaching, political and otherwise, before you sat in the chair, of how we can best contribute to the nation building of this country. And I'm happy that the PAC government has picked up from your vision of the nation building. Even though it's called something else, there are many aspects within it. And I believe, as I interjected much earlier, yes, out of many, Mr. Speaker, we are one people. But together, Mr. Speaker, we are stronger. Divided, we would fall. Falling for Caymanians is not an option. And although I have to sit because my time is gone, I will not rest until I see a united parliament for a united Cayman Islands. Because even though we can be competitive, we must strive always to be a strong coalition. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
The Premier, we have not quite reached the hour of 4:30, but I think in all good conscience, we wouldn't call on anybody at this point. Are you continuing? The member for Town East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Honourable Premier for allowing me to use up a few minutes before we close off this Honourable House. I know that we have an engagement this afternoon and we have to leave early, so I promise to be like Henry VIII. That was his wives.
I think you better finish that sentence. I shall not keep you long, you have to say.
Mr. Speaker, members of this Honourable House, good evening. And I've seen and heard elements of the budget. Obviously, I wasn't that intimate, and I believe this is a good one to get things done for people of the Cayman Islands. Seems just a few days I was over on the other side, Mr. Speaker, and when you're over on that side, you have to prepare your debate speech much different as if you would on this side. So obviously, I had to make some amendments and actually throw that one away with a new spirit. And although I'm of a conservative nature, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud the PAC government, and in particular the Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier, Mr. Chris Saunders, for guiding this process thus far. I spoke to a few of the government members, and they explained how the budget was actually achieved. They explained how the Minister of Finance actually spent a lot of one-on-one time with each minister and ministry and drilled down to create what has been presented, being mindful that the people of the Cayman Islands must benefit immensely. Again, I applaud the Minister of Finance, so new to this position, and taking the relevant advice, I'm sure, from FS and others and his team, and his experience in budget from his former life. Mr. Speaker, now I've just come over, so I didn't get a chance to be as intimate with this budget as they have, going through all the nitty-gritty. But I have trust that my good friend and the PAC team, that they did all their homework and got it right. I want to say I am so proud of all the young ministers who made their contributions in this honorable house and ably did so. So despite what some people were saying about lack of experience, in fact, I was also one of those. I think you, the ministers, are proving them wrong thus far. No major errors were made, and yes, there is still some experience to get, but it begs me to reiterate that Caymanians just need a chance, and we can conquer anything, it seems. And it's in our DNA, Mr. Speaker, just as our forefathers did, leaving home at 14 years old as boys and coming back home as engineers, chefs, and captains. So young, eager, energized, passionate ministers, I applaud you, and you should applaud yourselves, ministers. I heard contributions on work permits, one of the areas I think Deputy Premier will ask me to look at. And I saw some of the public utterances about the stress that some companies having with this. And I would like to say this. Some companies, we need to be real about this, some companies really don't want to hire Caymanians, and they refuse to do so. Some of the comments is that Caymanians don't have the qualifications, they lack the drive necessary, or they are lazy. And I say to you that in the 60s and 70s, we started telling our children, that they didn't have to go to sea anymore because you could wear a necktie and work in a bank and count Mr. Doucette's money. So, Mr. Speaker, as you know well, banking seemed very sexy back then, and Mama's boy didn't have to leave his country anymore, traveling on those dangerous high seas. When this started happening, I don't know if we realized that we were turning our backs on the power and the only true form of inward investment this country has ever had. And being the main contributor to our own inward investment was important, with seamen sending their monies back home. Houses were built, cars were bought, children went to school, all kinds of stuff happened, Mr. Speaker. So there was a lot of going on in this budding change over 50 years ago. So I say to everyone, don't underestimate the power of these locals. So people are concerned that they are not getting a chance, and not just a chance, Mr. Speaker, but one where employers wants you to succeed with an honest chance. I must say there are a lot of companies who are willing to motivate Caymanians, and they don't need to file work permits. And this needs to be encouraged, Mr. Speaker, and companies who do so and hire Caymanians need to be rewarded. So we have the same amount of transient workers in Cayman as Caymanians, so it's basically about 50-50. So we have an underemployment problem. Some may say that's a good problem. But we need to find a way to turn the work permit need in the other direction. And less need for them by training those who are willing. There is another problem, Mr. Speaker. We are growing so fast, we can't produce enough Caymanians in regards to the amount of jobs created, which is another good problem. So we need to look into this and understand who are we building for. So yes, we do need work permits. I understand that more than many people know. I'm sure many people do. We have had this problem for many years. And we need to work closely with companies who have high dependencies on transient workers to understand what is really needed. And we need to encourage Caymanians to apply for these jobs and help them with all the soft skills necessary to cope with this global world. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot I would love to touch on, but I promise to be brief with my speech. We are still in the middle of a pandemic, and I will assist my government in any way I can to have a common sense approach to a problem that no one really knows how to eradicate, but to continue with our COVID protocols, such as mask wearing, etc. We will monitor this every week and learn from our mistakes, around the world, but also recognize that we can't fear COVID. We have to confront it and learn to live with this in our midst. I have ambitions to work with Minister Bryan in the Transport Ministry. And in short, I just want to say we need to have constructive dialogue with the cruise industry about doing business in the Cayman Islands. And it can't be business as usual in terms of the construct of how our operators are dealt with and given the meager shares in the past. This can't continue, Mr. Speaker, if I have anything to do with it. And Minister Bryan agrees this is an area of concern. I will work with Minister J.E. Banks to come up with new ideas and design affordable homes, increasing the inventory so as many Caymanians as possible can achieve their dream in owning a piece of this rock. One of the most rewarding things a person can do in their lives, Mr. Speaker, is own a home. Mr. Speaker, one of my desires, and I'll work with this government, we have to recognize that there are some people that are not going to go out and apply for a regular job. And one of my ideas was to have the NICE program 3 times per year. I haven't discussed this with the team, so this is only one of my desires, Mr. Speaker. One in the summer before back to school, so persons can assist their children who are unemployed in getting ready to go back to school. At winter, so persons can buy their children gifts for Christmas, and also in the spring. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I hadn't discussed this with the group, but we can all agree that we have some of our people that will welcome this opportunity, that they can manage, and they have proven to be able to manage this. And what I like about the NICE program, Mr. Speaker, is that a lot of the workers who have showed potential have transitioned into areas such as public works and NRA, and that's a beautiful thing. Mr. Speaker, now to Bordentown East. The PAC and I have discussed.
How much longer you think?
Not much longer, Mr. Speaker, probably not even 5 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if...
You can continue. Let's continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, on to Bordentown East. The PAC and I have discussed many things for Bordentown East, and one of those things is already in the budget, the Bordentown School Hall that is long overdue. And I thank the Minister of Education for also having the same vision in making this become reality. The one that we have there now can possibly hold about 50 people, and everybody else have to hold their foot outside. Mr. Speaker, the new school hall will hold about 675 people, and also will be a hurricane shelter, which is really needed for the Bordentown area. Mr. Speaker, we also discussed the Cumber Avenue, the Belford and the Midland Acre flooding problem, and will come up with solutions for this humbugging matter that disrupts the lives of people and damages so many persons' property. We have discussed road pavings for Belford, Midland, and Lookout Gardens. We have also discussed completing the Bright Court Park, the Frenchman Park in Breakers area, and developing a new beach park in the area of Midland Acres and Pease Bay on a new property bought just about 2 years ago. Also, we have discussed creating a boardwalk at the Miggy Bay Pond, and the DOE is also already in favor. You had to get their approval first. And the lookout area for bird watching, so persons can enjoy the environment. Mr. Speaker, we have also discussed finding the funding for a mini hospital on Anton Borden Road. This was an outline business case done, and decided that this was the best area strategically to place a mini hospital, as I call it. Mr. Speaker, we are also discussed beautifying Bordentown proper and giving it the sizable uplift that it needs. Mr. Speaker, I have in the past thought that Bordentown should have its own bush cutter and its own water suction truck, if that is what it's called, because not that we are the fastest growing or the largest constituency, but we take too long to see our roadsides cut, and we have to share with every other district the suction truck, and it takes too long to remove the standing water when there's heavy rains. Mr. Speaker, this is something I've spoke about over and over again. I've always deemed to have a craft market in Bordentown, Mr. Speaker, and teach our people how to make crafts and set up shop so that tourists can have another reason to stop and shop with us in Bordentown. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister earlier said, I was one of the first persons to have a hurricane shutter program in Bordentown, where we would put hurricane shutters on elderly homes. And I think we need to continue that. We start with the elderly first, because they're the persons that more than likely need assistance for persons coming to help them during the approaching hurricane. One of the other initiatives, Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up, is free Wi-Fi. Just like my colleague, MP Connolly and MP White did in Windsor Park. And it's a beautiful thing for persons to be able to go in the area and get free Wi-Fi. Mr. Speaker, as I said, it wouldn't be long, but I wanted to ensure that my voice was heard during this budget process. It's quite new for me to be coming from one side to the other and then having to do a speech and not knowing everything about or having great intimacy with the budget. And from what I've heard so far, Mr. Speaker, and from what other ministers have told me that has been included in the budget, this is a large document, or in fact, the document is so large, you may need to get a bulldozer to come in here to pick them up. But we also need to, the next time we have a budget in this House, I really don't want to see all this paper being used in this honorable House. Not with everybody having a laptop. There's no need for us to print all these. Half of these books we're not going to even look at. So I want to say, I believe history will be kind to me, Mr. Speaker. And I want to do the best for not only the constituency, my constituency of Bordentown East, but for this country. I think that anything that we can do, even if it's 1% that we can offer to make things better in this country, Mr. Speaker, that's the reason why I'm over on this side, to give any support that I can. And sometimes I forget how versatile I am and the things and experience that I've had in the past, and I could lend such support in many areas. And Mr. Speaker, because I know of the time, there's a lot more things I could have said of initiatives that I've done over the years as Speaker, etc. I think there will be other opportunities to speak about that, but I wanted to again commend the Park government for being more aggressive than I would have ever thought. I would have never thought to be that aggressive in terms of a budget. But now that I hear the vision, I understand what they're trying to achieve, and I'm proud to be here to assist you all. Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you very much, Deputy Premier. Thank you very much, ministers. Thank you very much, parliamentary secretaries. Thank you to the coalition government that I sat at. I have nothing ill to say about them. I had a great experience over there. But you know, when your district is looking for you to get things for them, you need to find a way to get it. And this is a way of me contributing. And I feel proud of the decision that I made in trying to assist the government. And I pray that all 19 of us in this House can at least come to some common ground on a lot of the things that we shouldn't fight over, like COVID and other social issues that I heard the Honorable Minister Ebanks talked about this morning. What a great speech he had this morning. And and also Honorable Minister of Education that spoke this morning. And, you know, I am so proud of you guys. I mean, I heard all the ministers, Mr. Bryan, I heard Minister J, you know, very surprising to everybody else, you know, very vociferous. And, you know, and I heard all the other parliamentary secretaries spoke. And I'm just so proud that, and the reason why I'm so proud, Mr. Speaker, if you'll allow me to say, is that in Cayman, there was almost, it was a situation where you had to recycle the politicians. If you know what I mean, Mr. Speaker, you've been here, you're the grandfather of the house. But it was almost like it was one iteration of the next, but one person would be on the opposition one side, and then the next year it would be on the government. And there was not a great pool of politicians. And I'm glad that we're able to inspire other younger politicians to be able to come and say, look, not just because I'm young that I can't join one of the elected members and learn more about politics. And the 19 members of this House, I'm saying to you, let's not have a situation where we are 70 years old and we have no persons that we have trained up to come behind us. And don't just train one person. Get a bunch of persons. You know, some people may, over the years, lose interest, you know? And let's try to get a lot more women involved in politics. I mean, my daughter, I don't know why, maybe because I got elected 3 times, but now she's studying political science and international business. And I'm saying she's in the UK university. And I'm wondering why she chose that. I would have told her not to. But, and I say that just, but she would kill me if she heard that. I'm sure she will. But I want to say today, Mr. Speaker, before I close, is that today is my mother's birthday, and also my wife's grandmother's birthday, and my employee, Miss Donna's birthday. So I want to say happy birthday to them, and there's keep your prayers going. There's 2 people very low right now from central Bordentown that were mothers to me, Miss Joanne and Miss May, and they're very, very low. I really want you to keep them in your prayers. We lost one earlier, and the doctors brought her back. But please keep them in your prayers. Mr. Speaker, this is a wonderful country. Everybody that come here doesn't want to go back. Let's find a way. There's a reason why people love the Caymanian spirit. There's a reason why people come here. Let's ensure that when people come here, that they appreciate the native, find a way to interact, just like they did 60, 70 years ago, interact with the natives and appreciate them, appreciate their history, learn about it, and appreciate living amongst us and understanding that we need to live to, and help us, share things with us if our minds are not as global as yours. But we welcome you, because every one of us in here have grandfathers or mothers and fathers from somewhere else. So we're connected. So I say to you, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of unity and the great spirit of the singer Black Uru, and I know my good friend Deputy Premier knows him. It says solidarity. Everybody wants the same thing, don't they? Everybody wants a happy end. Everybody wants to work for a living. What we need is solidarity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and God bless.
The Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, for someone who professed some reluctance to start speaking, he certainly acquitted himself well and didn't seem to want to stop. But I think I'd like to join, and I'm sure all of my colleagues do, join in the expressions of concern for the individual members of his constituency, well-known members of Borden Town, and we wish them absolutely the best as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I will move the adjournment of this Honourable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, so that we can attend the school graduation this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Question is that this Honourable Parliament do stand adjourned until tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable Parliament stands adjourned until tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.